Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another, a cat's dream, nightmare, day, night. I don't know what the fuck it is anymore. But welcome back to another stream. I am with my good friend, Mr. Jenson Quinn, and we've got some stories today. Mr. Crumplepoint may be joining us a bit later. I'm not sure if we got our wires crossed on timing or whatnot, but should be interesting. Should be good stories. Got some good ones today, to be fair, actually. How are you doing today, Mr. Quinzer?
I'm actually doing quite fine, thank you very much. I've had a bit of a crap time with my internet, but it seems to be working. I make that clear just in case I suddenly disappear. It's nothing personal, it's my pox-ridden internet.
That's fair
And
enough.
B's already talking about your bloody hair.
No,
You do know your hair could have its own show, don't you?
but according to B, it can, yes. According to fucking B, it can, yes. My hair is more interesting than what I am. To be fair, that says more about me than my hair, though. Damn.
I didn't want to say anything. I thought that was a good time for me to be quiet.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like I'm going to kick you and do the show by myself. Please don't leave me.
Oh, no, you didn't see what B's put. Why did Joe's balls drop? His voice was high pitched there. Did my voice actually drop?
I don't know, but both of us are called Jay, so what Jay is she talking about?
Fair play, sir.
I mean, I'm pretty sure she means you, but oh.
Yeah. Apparently my voice changed. Whatever's. Anyway, you have stories. We have random talks. What you got?
I do indeed, but I'm not ready because I was looking at my live stream and it told me that it wasn't going to be working for me today.
Ah.
So I don't know what's going on. It might just be my Google, as Google's always playing up. Oh, Jensen, high pitch. Yeah, she was talking about you, mate.
Yeah, okay, good.
And as we were talking about hair, and as hair's supposed to be really hot, apparently, why not talk about that crap, really, I suppose? I've done it wrong. I was trying to lean it into, but it didn't work. It didn't work, you see.
Of course.
It didn't work. But as I'm hot, let's talk about wildfires. It kind of worked, but not as the way that I wanted it to be. So, yeah. Why are there UK wildfires in February? I don't know. Is this a joke? Knock.
Yeah, I can straight away bring this back to a conversation we had a while ago about how Muslimics were being given flamethrowers before being sent into Europe. Just want to remind you of that conversation.
Well, to be fair, they are burning Scotland and Wales, so it's fine with me at the minute.
Funny you say that, seeing as our official Scottish representative has turned up.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Point?
Hello.
Hello, you guys.
I'm all right. How are you guys?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. We kind of.
So who's going all Thomas Victor and why?
Sorry.
Who's going all Thomas Victor and why?
Oh, we only literally just started into the stories. It's just about forest fires at the minute in February. And it's in your neck. Well, I say in your neck of the woods. It's up in Scotland and Wales.
Well,
I wouldn't say Wales was upward of anywhere, but yes.
Ashdown Forest and East. No, wait, no. What? Let me just read the story. It'll be easier. All right. Scorched earth images of Marsden Moor, close to Saddleworth, look horribly familiar. In June 2018, a fire on moorland in that area took hold and burned for weeks. Blah, 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 blah. Separate fires broke out on Tuesday. Yes, that's how they wrote it, not how I'm reading it. 2 in Ashdown Forest in East Sussex. The woodland made famous in A.A. Mellen's Winnie the Pooh stories. In Scotland, firefighters battled through the night to extinguish a large gorse fire on Arthur's Set in Edinburgh. And in fuck that, North Wales. A man had to be rescued from his tractor when it was cut off by the flames of a hillside gross fire. So it's all to do with Gore's fire then. So it's all really, really dry grass.
That's a shame. It might be legit, I guess, if that stuff does get pretty nasty, and it got really warm really suddenly up here, so it might actually be fairly innocent. It might not be the Muslims armed with Thomas Victor flamethrowers.
Ah, but it'd be so much better if it was.
Well,
In
not
all
necessarily,
fairness-
because nobody would be able to arrest them without being racist and therefore having to arrest themselves in the process yet. So it's best we hold off.
Yeah.
Don't be funny. We don't see colour.
I wasn't being funny. I was declaring the official position of the Scottish government.
I was also declaring the official policy of the UK government.
But not the official policy of the Common Sense Guy channel.
No, fuck them all.
Has anyone done that to you before?
No. So the story goes on to ask this amazing question. So what is happening in a changing climate? So it's not climate change, it's just in a changing climate at this moment in time. By the way, for people that are watching going, if he doesn't believe in climate change, I do. It's quite evident, especially considering it's fucking 15 and 17 degrees in February. I kind of agree that things are getting warmer, but it's just changing of the words and the way things are happening. It makes me wonder what's going on. So
I
wouldn't
believe
have
in
advised-
climate change. I just
Right.
don't believe in the kind that requires any kind of money.
True.
Oh,
True.
this terrible thing is happening. We need some money to fix it. Okay, that's bullshit. What have you got for me? You know, that's how I work on these things.
Yeah, but what's the evidence? Well, 97 scientists agree that climate change is real. Well, obviously, because climate change is real, the climate changes.
I've still not heard a good rebuttal to the argument about the fact that we've clearly not reached the temperatures that we're supposed to have. If you look at like the dinosaurs, when it was hottest then,
Yeah.
it's been cooling down ever since. Then it started to get warmer again, and we've never hit that peak again. And so until we reach that peak, and it still gets warmer, then I'll worry.
Well, we're supposed to have mini ice ages every 200 to every 300,000 years, and we're about 200,000 years past our due date. We're 5,000 years past one. Sorry, 500,000 years past a mini ice age or an ice age.
I demand my ice age.
I don't want an ice age, but I don't mind it being a little bit cooler.
Jenson Quinn there with the official Green Party slogan for 2020.
Yep. Literally
Actually-
the official, or is it we need more money because we're bankrupt? That's probably more the official one.
They're the same thing to them. Environment. If I give you some money, will you shut up? Yes. That's
Why do you think I'm screaming about environment? I need money to be quiet.
In all fairness, if we can actually get an ice age back, I'll be okay with it as long as we can have saber-toothed tigers back. If we don't get them, I'm not interested. No, none of that rubbish. I want my saber-toothed tigers back.
Well, I imagine that we wouldn't see it in our lifetimes, obviously, and I don't think it would be in any sort of 1,000 years, but there would be different animals about. That's a definite, because evolution would force them to change, to adapt to their situations and surroundings. A lot of them would also die, but there would be differences and changes.
Yeah,
Well,
fair
when
point.
it's snowy, I'm happier than a pig in shite, so I'm fine with this.
Well, you would be. You're Scottish.
No, they're just happy as a pig in shite when they're in shite.
Or in the pub.
Same difference.
Oh,
Sawdust is there for a reason, people.
See, from a different area. See, it's lost in translation. Oh, do we want to carry on reading the story? Because basically, they're trying to say that there's a lot of wildfires that seem to be happening, and it's probably due to global warming. Do we need to read it?
Honestly, I think you pretty much covered it with literally what we've already said. Sorry, dude, but you know, it's very much a We want your attention. Look, the world is ending. The world is ending. Give us money.
Well, probably something along those lines. But I think it's interesting because it seems that this year has been one of the hottest years in general. And I mean, from the beginning of, the beginning of 2017 up to now. I think it's been very warm, to be fair. I think it's been very, very warm all the way through. And it just keeps on getting warmer and warmer. Now,
Well,
that doesn't mean...
this, though, but we had snow that was knee-deep in Scotland in summer last year. So, I mean, they can't have it both ways.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying that I think that it's completely going to be horrible for the next couple of years. I think it's a trend. You notice these type of trends where it's warmer and then it's cooler, and then it's cooler and then it's warmer. I'm not saying that it's going to continue to get warm. I think it has a lot to do with the tilt of the Earth and where the Earth is in its orbit around the sun and how close we are as its orbit to do with the sun as well. I don't think it's just to do with man-made climate change. There's lots of other variables that are involved in it. It just seems interesting to me that we now get in England that is getting, or UK in general, that is getting forest fires. Now, don't get me wrong, I know we've had them before, but we don't normally get them as regular as twice or 4 in a year. Doesn't seem to normally go like that. Not unless they're preset, and then we normally do them for arsony.
Well, there's a thing, because let's say there's 12 every year. We never really hear about them. So all they need to do to reframe it in the public mind as an existential threat is to actually report on them for a change. Like, we know the statistics are there. They just don't get talked about.
True. I think there's a lot there. I mean, as Jenson already said, I mean, the dinosaurs were a hell of a lot warmer. And obviously there was a lot more water around and whatnot, and the seas were a lot higher. Apart from people that live on the coast, and obviously relocating them because nobody would really want them to die, obviously, it's not really going to affect the world that badly. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that people are not going to die because of it, because they're not being able to relocate and the poorer people and whatnot. But as wiping out a species event or an extinction event, don't think so. It will be detrimental to human life and the way that we live now, but it won't be an extinction event like everybody's trying to dictate it will be.
Can I piss off an entire state in America on your channel, please?
You can, but please leave Oregon out of it.
Okay, it won't be Oregon. That I promise you.
Mad dodge.
Yeah. Think of it this way, okay? If the water rises and areas flood, we have one golden light that will shine upon us, and that is the fact that California will sink under the water. Straight away, I've made the whole world a better place.
Only parts of California would sink because of the way that the seas rose last time. It went into the middle of America and actually kind of made the sort of a sandwich effect as it pulled the edges up. That's why they could say that Florida had more land mass because of the one of the bits of the water that made the land be a lot heavier, as well as the actual ice sheet that come all the way down as well, or the glacier sheet, should I say.
Trying to imagine the look on Jenson's face when Northern California with all the normal people floods and then SoCal's just totally fine.
Oh.
I will be so pissed.
The good thing is, though, at least they'll be able to wash the shit away.
That's true. That is true. And let's be fair, they really kind of need to want to get on that. I mean, typhus is back out. You know,
they've got an app for it, though, Jenson. They've got an app for it now.
Oh, so they do, Jesus. Oh, man.
They've literally got an app for it.
Wonderful. So now you know where not to go. Why?
No. The app is not for the app isn't for knowing where not to go. The app is actually for knowing where to go to do a shit.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of reverse psychology inclusivity bullshit is that?
I have no idea.
That's
you
a
have
crime,
to remember that it is California.
That's an app telling you how to commit a crime.
Pretty much.
Fucking Silicon Valley retards.
You gotta love a Scottish man being angry.
You've got to, otherwise you're fucked.
Indeed. Speaking of fucked, let's talk about feminism, and let's talk about the fact that a woman has been banned from Twitter because she said certain words and certain things, shall we?
Go for it.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, I'm sure that everybody has heard of, what's her name? Susan something or other. Susan Evans. Susan Evans, there we go. She's right there in front of me, to be fair, literally. So Twitter bars Susan Evans from saying trans women wasn't ladylike. Interesting, isn't it?
That's it.
What was it?
She
Was
said.
it the stubble or the Adam's apple?
I think it's more of a case of, I think she's been talking about the athletes, obviously the transgender women that have been winning women's events.
You mean the people taking performance-enhancing drugs and cheating their way to victory in women's events?
Something like. Oh, there's the actual tweet that was actually violated. When I was unfortunate enough to encounter you on Newsnight and Paris Les or whatever, you were unbelievably nasty and aggressive. Dare I say it, not the slightest bit ladylike. So generally not actually saying directly though, that you are not a woman. She was saying that you acting as a woman wasn't very ladylike. You can say that to any woman, but that doesn't make them not a woman, does it?
She didn't type that from Arthur's seat, did she? Holy shit! We found the source of the fire, ladies and gentlemen.
Guess who organised a pile-on because obviously she used to be in UKIP.
Go on.
Owen Jones organised a pile-on, which resulted in Twitter decreeing that Susan's tweet had violated their definition of hateful conduct, which, whatever, and locking her account temporarily with a warning that she could be permanently suspended if she violated their rules again.
So what happened there is Twitter actually had its own broke its own rules of conduct, because she would have said that to another woman.
No,
so
she said it to a trans
woman.
She said it to a trans woman, and that's why everybody's picking it up.
But what I'm saying is that their bias is the problem here, because she's saying that wasn't very ladylike. Now, I'm sure she says that to women fairly frequently. So it's actually Twitter and Owen Jones that are saying, oh, you can't say that to a trans woman.
Yes, because there's underlying dog whistles. There's underlying dog whistles where you're really meaning that she's not a lady, so she's not a woman. How bigoted of you. I believe that's where you were going with that.
Well, basically, that's their opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I've always thought that the left are always more racist than the right, because the left are always the ones pointing things out that the right doesn't even think's racist. Not because the right's akin to it, but because the right doesn't even think about it, where the left are perpetually always thinking about it. Completely and utterly all the time. Everything's about race and gender.
Well, in all fairness, if we're going to have a little bit of lefty bashing, and that's always good for a chuckle.
I don't like using my left.
I would like to point out that it was the Democrats that created the KKK.
You mean the Dixiecrats?
Yeah. So, yeah, you can say what you like about the GOP. They didn't make the KKK.
They didn't make America great again.
Yeah, because, that's just as bad as the KKK.
Yeah. I mean, I love this little editorial at the end. Whatever anyone's views on the trans debate, it is deeply troubling that Twitter saw fit to bar Evans from the site over what is at worst an insensitive comment. Which, to be fair, I don't even think it's an insensitive comment. I don't even think that she was going after the person because of them being trans. I think it's exactly the same as what me and Crumplepoint have been saying, that it's a case of you would say this to a lady, so she was saying it to what she perceived to be a lady. You're not acting ladylike. You say that to little girls all the time. Doesn't mean that you're calling her not a lady or a woman.
Yeah, agree.
Particularly given the cesspit of generally violent and threatening abuse which goes ignored on a daily basis. Juicy Smollett! Oh, sorry. I must have forgot where I was there. It's a hateful comment, don't you know, to say that somebody's not acting ladylike. It's so hateful that it should bar you from having a platform on social media.
All pretense aside,
that's where we are.
It's obviously that's what the joke meant, but it's not. It shouldn't be a bannable offense. It shouldn't even be news. It's like, if you're going to be, if you're right, with the thing with minorities is they're different from everybody else by their own definition and usually by their own choice. So, well, not usually, but often, because for example, if you've got like a race that's a minority, they don't have much say in that. But if you segregate people on the basis of race, you see what I mean? Like, you can choose not to do that. That's kind of what I was getting at. So if you're a minority, you therefore, by definition, stick out from the crowd. If you stick out from the crowd, that will be pointed out. Yeah. And if it's pointed out, that means it can probably be used in humour. That's how these things work. If she had said, "Shut up, you spotty bastard," that would have been equally individual and personal an insult, and just as based on biology, but for some reason that probably would have been fine. But because it's to do with this other physical trait that the person has, we don't like it. You know, that's just how human interactions work. The person as well, I didn't see the show, but the person as well might have taken it fine. When Owen Jones and his little brigade of kulak hunters like to try and pile on people, it's usually not because the person themselves was that bothered about it.
Yeah, no, completely not agree. It's very, very interesting that we pick up on stereotypes to be able to form forms of comedy, to be able to laugh at our darkest sense of humor makes us human. Because if we can't laugh at our darkest sense of humor, then we are going to be doomed to repeat it and doomed to not even acknowledge it. And the way that you deal with darkness is acknowledge that it's there. You face the dark, you put light onto it. Whether that's to do with comedy, talking, politics, whatever. But comedy is the easiest way of dealing with that. The thing is with things like this, though, is that this is not even anything to do with comedy. This is nothing to do with even stereotyping. This is literally because somebody said ladylike to somebody who is trying to be a lady. Now, I don't care what you think on the trans issues or anything else like that. I don't care that the fact is that she wants to be a lady. Hence why I called her a she. I don't care. But if you're going to be so butthurt over your own perception of what you think somebody else means, that's where we have a problem. Where you are taking out the actual person's context of what they meant and inserting your own form of context to be able to condemn and completely dismain somebody just because that they have a different political opinion to you. Because let's be honest, that's the reason why Owen Jones did this. It wasn't because that he wanted to protect this trans woman or this woman in general. It's because that Suzanne Evans was a member of UKIP. He hates everybody and everything to do with UKIP. This was not a case of him protecting somebody, so don't even think that. This is him trying to attack somebody that he politically disaligns himself with. This has nothing to do with actual virtue signaling. This is one-upmanship, point scoring, simple as. And the sad thing is, it's the left that invents the victimhood and pushes that status to be able to form false narratives like the Jussie Smollett situation to benefit themselves rather than actually benefiting society. Benefiting society in which that they're trying to actually perpetuate. All they're doing is falsifying it to make them look better when in fact all they're doing is point scoring. I hate people that do that.
Yeah, and let's look at it from that angle. Like, who's really been abusing this person? The one that said, right, I'm going to treat you as an equal and I'm going to give as good as I get because you're now my political opponent, or the one that said, oh, you're too weak and helpless to defend yourself. I'm going to now use your life as a pretext to attack my political opponents. Who's really worse out of those two?
Exactly. Somebody that's having a little bit of jive and a little bit of jab, or somebody who's literally trying to falsify a false narrative just to be able to politically point score. I don't know what one's worse. I can't imagine. I suppose it's the one that's trying to falsify gender. I mean, you know,
the thing I learned when I was a kid is that my parents basically taught me that it was fine to be whatever I wanted to be, but don't advertise something you don't want people to take the piss out of.
Yeah.
And that was to do with liking comic books and Superman and shit like that. That wasn't even anything as serious and deep cut as a political or sexual thing, right? So the thing is, it's really easy to blend into a crowd.
Yeah.
And that's what most people do most of the time. If you attract attention to yourself, then that is going to come with criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is completely okay. You're allowed to be the person you want to be. But people behave in a certain way. And so be careful before you advertise it, because if you're not prepared for that thing you just advertised to come back and bite you, you can't advertise it yet. You're not ready, basically.
Yeah, I mean, let's take your great point to its logical conclusion. People like Owen Jones want to have a socialist form of utopia. Now, I don't understand what his form of socialism is, but the main form of socialism and communism is that everybody is created equal and everybody should be equal, and then they're going to force the equality onto everybody, even if you're different. The thing is with that, then you're forcing people to be the same. You're not allowing them to be themselves or to be who they want to be. You're telling them what they need to do and what they need to be. Thing is with that is that the tallest grass always gets cut. So the ones that are different are always the ones that get cut down first. And that is always to do with a socialistic ideology. You have to be the same. You can't be above, you can't be below, you can't be anything. You're always at the lowest common denominator. And that's the reason why generally, especially with people like Owen Jones, they invent victimhood to be able to perpetuate to people that see victimhood everywhere. Because otherwise, people just don't see what they want to see, and they make up shit to be able to see it. Otherwise, it destroys their worldview.
Well, the other thing with Owen Jones's case is he has to use all this stuff as a smokescreen to hide both his own ineptitude and his real privilege. Like his real privilege, his actual privilege of coming from a nice family and having lots of money all his life and a good education and nobody ever really bothering him in his whole life. And I wouldn't even wager, like, given his background, I don't see it possible, because he likes to parade around as if he's this victim of horrendous homophobia forever. And it's just like, you know what, given your background, I believe homophobia is a thing and I believe people are subject to it. But I find it very difficult to believe that given you didn't actually do anything all your life, except get pampered, that you have the same right to complain as somebody like who's working for Stonewall or something like that. It's just he needs. I could be wrong about that. Maybe he has had these things, but generally, if somebody is co-opting another person's victimhood so frequently, they generally don't have that much to complain about themselves.
Well, I don't even think that he's trying to, in this story anyway, in this instance, I don't even think that he's trying to co-opt their story. I think that he's trying to make their victimhood status part of his victimhood status and get everybody to fight under him because he's the one that's defending somebody else's victimhood, not because he actually wants to defend it. He just wants to have the appearance and have the backing of people to be able to say, I did something. And I think a lot of people, especially on the left, that see all of these, and there are forms of inequities that are in around, and we can all admit that. So people do see that there is that sort of stuff around. But the thing is, when you keep on getting told that it is all around and not just a bit around or in certain circumstances or whatever, then you're always looking for that victimhood. And if you find people like Owen Jones, you can then get that form of victimhood every single day and have that little bit of passion to say, I'm changing the world. Because it's not about the fact of actually helping those people. It's about saying, I did something. Because if it was about helping those people, you would actually help the people that you don't get stories from. And they don't do that. Or at least I think so anyway.
No,
But
I
if
agree.
you've got a different opinion, please let me know.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I would add that Owen Jones's type of socialism is whatever one lets him be in charge. And that's the problem with all these people.
Yes. No, I completely agree with that. It is a kind of a narcissism that keeps on saying that if I was in charge, my form of socialism would be the correct one and would lead us to the utopia. That I do agree with Jordan Peterson on.
Yeah, and I also don't believe, we've spoken about this before, I also don't believe that that's, if you break them down to their core, that's just their pretext. That's not their actual thought process. Their actual thought process is that they have this nihilistic bent that they just have to destroy things, and they can't not, and nothing's ever going to be good enough for them.
Yeah. You see that with the systems in place, even in a social democracy country like the UK, they still try to say that they want to get rid of the government. They still say that they want to get rid of all of the institutions that were in place, not just certain ones. They want to get rid of all of it because they want to implement their version of it. To me, that's complete and not anarchism, but it's a form of destruction that just isn't necessary. You don't need to destroy everything that's already been built up by civilizations that has happened over thousands upon thousands of years to get to that point, and you come along and think, now I can do it better, watch this. Yeah, fuck off.
It has the problem with that they have is it has the core of Western Judeo-Christian liberal values running right through it, right to its innermost core, and that can't be chipped away, so it has to be toppled and completely replaced. Because if you hack bits off of it, that core will always be there, and that is not good for them. That's their issue with all that, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Mr. Quinn, you've been quiet for a while. Would you like to have the floor, sir, and give us your opinion on this situation?
Okay. All right. It's all bollocks. Okay, let's break it down. No, I'm just cutting through a lot of the rubbish here. It's all bollocks. Socialism is a wonderful idea, and I'm sure it is the perfect society. What a shame we're the wrong goddamn species, and it is absolutely against human nature to actually be socialist. Which means all these wonderful socialists are literally fighting against their own natural existence. And that is one of the major problems I've got with these Muppets, because, deal with it. I know that humanity is a herd animal, but even herds still have outsiders, and outsiders are not necessarily always a bad thing. After all, if it wasn't for outsiders, and yes, I am going to reuse that term, we wouldn't get a lot of the genetic diversity that is needed in the animal kingdom. Now, I realize that this is a little bit sideways on the whole thing with the socialism, but socialism would actually want to remove up to and including execute all people that are not part of their perfect society. As I've already pre-stated, wrong species, we are not going to have any form of working socialism, or at least that's my opinion.
No, I absolutely, completely not agree with you. Socialism in itself is a great idea. The only problem is with socialism is, as what you said, people's natural ideas are to gravitate towards people, but generally it's to gravitate against small people. We don't see each other as a species or as a interlocking family group or species group. We see each other as sometimes enemies, as in being able to devise the chance of being able to get what we want. Now, the point that I was actually trying to get to, rather than me being sidetracked by my own idiocies, is that when it comes to socialism, socialism works until people want something different. And that can be on a daily basis, it can be on a weekly basis, it can be on a yearly basis, it could be in 10 years, it could be in 20 years. The thing is that socialism is a case of a collective deciding what they want to do. The problems with collectives deciding what they want to do, individuals will always decide something else. So you either get rid of those individuals, as Jenson Quinn said, or they end up voting the collective out. Or forcing them out, one way or other.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we're talking about innies and outies...
You managed to say it so much better than I did.
Yeah, that's fine. I just thought I'd just help you along, that's all.
My issue with socialism is that it isn't... It's an anti-human doctrine. And the thing is, it isn't. I'm trying to work out what the right word is. I know what the word for socialism is, and it isn't bullshit, but it's our freedom, right? Freedom is a perspective. It's a life outlook, and it's a perspective. Socialism is a system, like a computer operating system. If you take a computer operating system outside of the computer, it doesn't exist. And even within the computer operating system, it can only exist at the leisure of the person making it. Whereas, so freedom is a way of looking at the world. Socialism is a system to be imposed on the world. And in human history, no system has ever actually worked. There's no such thing as a system that you can plan out, execute in the real world as it was planned, and it maintain itself.
Yeah.
There's no system like it. It's never been done. Government doesn't work. Religion doesn't work. Martial arts, it doesn't work. Philosophy doesn't work. There's not a single system on this planet that you can just implement and that it stays.
Science does. Science does. It's the only system that humanity has devised that actually can.
I would argue it isn't even a system, though. That's the point.
It's a system of devising what our naturalistic world is and finding out what it is. It is a system,
but it's not a system in that there is no. You could argue that it's a very small, simple system, I guess. But I would say again, it's more of an outlook. It's you've got a couple of axioms in science, but after that, anything goes, and that's the whole point in it. Whereas with socialism, there's not just the axioms; you have to follow every rule to the letter. And it's like, look at the NHS, look at things like that. You know, like very simple goal: provide healthcare to people. Does it do that? Does it fuck? You know, you can't make systems work, and the bigger you make the system and the more shit you add into it, it just feels more spectacularly. And that's socialism in a nutshell.
Yeah. No. Okay. That's fair enough. It's funny that you mentioned doctors, because would you be happy to see your doctor online? Yes. This is actually a BBC story. Would you be happy to see your doctor online, Mr. Crumplepoint?
Yeah, because I do it anyway, because the doctors are so bloody useless that that's what I have to do.
No, actually seeing your doctor online, not using Google.
I was being intentionally hyperbolic. No, I would not like to have MSN doctor.
For me, it depends. I was saying this to Mr. Quinn before the show. It depends. It depends on what they're going to be used for. If it's a case of being able to get an appointment to repeat your prescriptions, for instance, where some people don't always get repeat prescriptions because they need to have a talk about what their drug level is and whatnot. I think that would be interesting, and that would probably benefit people and be able to get numbers out of the GP waiting rooms and whatnot. I think that would be quite good. But I don't think that's what they're going to use it for. I actually think that they're going to use it as a diagnosis tool, and that's just not going to work at all. Not for me, anyway.
Well, as we're talking about doctors and the internet, I would point out that I do know of somebody who went to their doctor, had the examination, and then the doctor, because they're such a genius, Googled the answers. And before you say, oh, no, they have access to certain websites, yet I understand all that. No, they literally Googled it.
I know, I agree. I mean, when I was getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I literally had to, well, figuratively, should I say, but I had to grab the hand of the doctor and lead the doctor down the pathway to be able to go, see these symptoms? I know what they add up to, but what do you think they add up to? And then try and get it so the GP was the one who decided what the symptoms were.
Yeah.
That's kind of the problem that I have. But you still wouldn't be able to do that online because they would actually want you to come in for tests anyway. You can't do a blood test while you're online, so you'd be wasting an appointment to go get another appointment. It would be ludicrously wasteful. But then again, it is controlled by the government, so I wouldn't expect anything less.
Well, we just know that I'm very glad that this is the segue after my little systems rant, because that's exactly it. Like, systems exist to perpetuate themselves, and this isn't going to end well. So you could argue one way or the other. You could argue it might further the collapse and reform of the NHS, in which case it would be a good thing, but it would be terrible in the short run. Or it might just allow it to limp on for even more decades, which would be a disaster. But all that's going to happen is they're going to process a couple of patients. Those patients will be seen incorrectly because they can't even do the stuff right in person. They're going to have to hire more doctors online to do the online stuff, which will take away from the actual practice. And so what's going to happen is it will have the reverse effect. And I fully expect that what would happen is they will actually end up just hiring admin people with a checklist like they have on NHS 24 to do it, rather than an actual doctor. And people will just be getting these sort of checklists. It's just so that people can say they've been seen by the NHS in some form or another.
No, I've just read the fucking story. I'm not happy. This story is not even based on the clients or the patients being able to see the doctor. This whole story was concocted and put together by Dr. Lydia Campbell-Hill, who's a single mother, that says that this is a good thing for her because she can see her children more, or child more. So Lydia Campbell-Hill, a 35-year-old doctor for Cornwall, England, says switching to online consultants has transferred her life. As a part-time GP working 3 days a week, I was doing 39 hours or more. Poor fucking you. I used to do over 56 hours a week when I was working. And that was just easy, normal days. Most people do around about 46 to 48. So you're obviously working fucking hard. I was solo parenting, paying vast amounts on childcare and not seeing my child much. I'm sorry that things were happening that way for you, but that doesn't mean that you should fuck up everybody else's life just because yours is not going the way that you want it to, by not being able to see your patients. What happens if I come and I've got a big lump that I want you to see and I have to have a fucking disappointment first, and then the next time I get to see you is in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, and then by that time it's too late for the cancer to be stopped? What happens on that point? All because you want to look after your child more, and all because that you want to be able to spend more time at home. After leaving her clinic-based job and working mainly online for her lounge or kitchen, she says, my stress levels have dropped and I can fit my hours around school, even working a couple of hours in the evening after my son has gone to bed.
So is this her switching over to working for something like
US primary care provider One Medical says giving doctors the flexibility to work remotely greatly improves their quality of life. Yes, it fucking would do. If I could do my work at home and do my consultancy at home or do anything at bloody home or try and do a construction site at home, of course it's going to release my fucking stress levels because I'm not going out to work. The virtual team, they may have kids at home. They may be in places like Hawaii, he says. It works brilliantly. Obviously, US doctor, obviously you can see US states and everything else like that, which is interesting because are certain drugs only allowed in certain states? I'm pretty sure that the FDA doesn't approve of all of them in every single state, but I could be wrong on that point. It works brilliantly. It actually helps if you need a flexible schedule or are in an area where we don't have bricks and mortar. Quality of life is one thing, but the telemedicine is also about hard-headed economics. Or you're just being too fucking lazy to actually go into work and you want to do it at home. Sorry, guys, I got a little bit annoyed. Have at it for a little bit and I'll be quiet.
Okay. I'm just going to go with the...
All yours, guys, if you want to dig into it.
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you at all, Mr. Jenson. I don't know if that's on my side or not.
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Jenson.
Okay, mate. In that case...
I can't hear either of you, not unless I've just completely fucked everything up.
I think you screwed up, dude, somewhere. Just F5 and come back in. It usually...
I can't hear either of you.
Right. Hopefully he sees that inside chat. Anyway, as I was saying, as you know, I've got at least one person that can hear me. Can you imagine the absolute
I can't hear. That's always interesting.
Apparently they can hear us. It's just you, dude. But this doesn't help because you can't hear me. But like I was saying, can you imagine the abuses that this is going to have when it comes to ordering pills and whatnot? You're going to be able to totally take the piss with that. And any hacker halfway worth his time is going to be walking off with so many illegal. It's not going to be. CP?
Oh yeah, you cut out for a little bit there, but I got the gist. Just that last second or so. But yeah, no, I agree on the hacking thing, and I just think there's no end to how far the NHS would go with this, because it's the BBC reporting on this, and they're obviously testing the water, you know.
Yeah.
And so all that'll happen is they'll try and use this to speed up. The NHS are in a desperate situation just now, where they cannot process patients. It takes like 2 weeks to get a doctor's appointment in some places. It's just a disaster. So this is just borrowing more time for them, basically, if they were to manage to do this. I don't know. This story does sound kind of inflammatory. Like, I stand by everything I said at the start, but now that the story is more clear, this could just be as simple as an inflammatory news article about somebody who's stopped being a full-time doctor and now works for like WebMD or something like that. Because you do get sites that do this.
Yeah. CSG, can you hear us yet?
He's signed out. I think he's going to try and sign back in again.
Okay.
But the thing is that if you yes, if you look at like the American system, because they're private, they are actually a lot more accountable than our lot. And the other thing is that a private company doing online consultations is like pretty fucked if they have any kind of malpractice going on. Whereas if the NHS fuck up online, they don't care.
Fair, I suppose.
They fuck up in person, so they don't care. Like when you're in the room with them, let alone online. But so I think this is probably just this woman works for WebMD now or something like that.
Okay. CSG, can you hear us yet? I'm going to go in no. Oh boy. That's kind of awkward, because I was actually going to suggest giving B the Hangout link, because she worked with the NHS in primary care, so she'd actually be able to give us a lot more of an opinion on this. But unfortunately, with him not able to hear us, you know, I can't really go lobbing the link out everywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll just give him some time to get his shite together.
Yep, no worries, no worries. So, until he comes back, let's talk about something that's not the NHS. Right, have you been watching Gotham, the TV series?
No, I hate it.
How come?
I just really don't like it.
Okay, all right.
The first season had me kind of interested, but they lost me at the tail end of it, and then by the start of the second season, I was just like, nah, no thanks.
Now what are you doing?
Ah, hello. Can you hear us?
I can.
Right, in that case, before we go any further, B is saying that she used to work in primary care in the NHS. What do you think to me DMing her the Hangouts link so she can actually speak about this, seeing as, you know, this is what she did?
Oh, I don't know. Is she work? Yeah, go on then.
All right, mate. On it.
I obviously missed what everybody said. So, does somebody want to give us a quick rundown of what was said?
Yeah, Jenson quickly summarised that a hacker would very easily be able to get into any database or data transfer and just get hold of everybody's medical records. And I was saying that this is very likely just she doesn't work as a GP anymore and probably works for something like WebMD and gets paid that way. And it's probably something like that. You know how they have doctors come up and you can send them like, oh, I hurt my wrist, is it broken, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She's probably doing that, and it's probably because the BBC is inflammatory bullshit. They are probably just testing the water to see how people react to the idea of this over here.
I think it completely and utterly destroys the oath that they take. I can't remember the actual name.
Hippocratic oath.
Yeah. Hello, B. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm annoyed. I think the speakers on my laptop have died.
Oh dear. Have you got other speakers then?
No, I have headphones.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as it's working.
Enough.
All right then, Moni Bollocks. You, Sam, why didn't we invite you on? We've invited you on. Talk.
Well, the last I heard that they weren't going to do the Skype consultations because there was a lot that they needed to work out. So trying to remember the names of things as well. So you've got the council who pretty much regulates everything, and they are so hardcore that they don't like any sort of change in the NHS whatsoever. So you have to apply to those regulations, and I don't think they have a working model for the NHS to actually do online consultations. So if she's doing it, she's probably doing it for a private company. I don't think she's doing it for the NHS. Also, they have they did a thing, I think it was in 2015, where they looked at how many doctors they had in Sussex, I think it was, and they worked out that if every school leaver in Sussex, when they educated, became a GP, there wouldn't be enough doctors to sustain the growing population. That's just in Sussex alone. So if you're looking at London and other places, there are not enough doctors. So what the NHS is doing, they're doing a huge overhaul. So they're trying to get more people that can prescribe, like nurses and pharmacists, into GPs, so you get the right medication. They're also upskilling nurses, people who do muscular things like that. Can't remember what the name of them. So basically, when you go in, you won't necessarily be seeing a doctor. You'll be seeing someone who's more acute to deal with whatever your problem is.
Yeah.
They're also looking at like, I think Kent was one of the major things. So you've got a lot of older people in Kent. So they're trying to work with nursing homes and the communities that are there. I think maybe in Cornwall, it might do them better to do online consultations, because if you look at where people live in Cornwall, it's quite spread out. So going to your doctors, you would probably have to come out of your village and go into a major town, which can be quite of an inconvenience, especially if you're in pain. So I think if they do get a working model to do that, it would have to be regulated before the NHS even puts it out. And I know that you were saying about them being hacked. It would be on a private NHS server, like all your medical records are on a private NHS server. So
you do realise they got hacked, didn't you, about 2 years ago?
Yeah, I know, but I think you'll find
at least it wasn't left on a train this time.
Yeah, true. Or in a park.
I think you'll find that was one like trust or something like that, because they're all sort of silos. So if you hack something, you're only getting into one, you're not getting into them all. What else was I saying?
This is interesting, because I assumed you were doing all this stuff in England already, but this stuff you're talking about them rolling out, they've already been doing in Scotland for about 2 years, and it's been a fucking disaster. So, for example, if I go and see the nurse about a problem, there's very little that she can do. So what I would then do is they would try and foist me into, instead of seeing my doctor, seeing the prescribing nurse. But then there's actually very little she can do as well. She could prescribe basic medications. If it's anything complicated or she has to diagnose something, very often she has to go and get the GP in to look at you anyway. So now what you've done is you've actually deducted manpower from the nurse and the GP and basically overrun on 2 appointments rather than just one. Or not overrun at all.
That's why they're trying to upskill them. So, and obviously because they've got regulations that come out by I think it's the commissioning people who do that.
Well, here's another thing as well. I don't think they even need more GPs, because the problem I keep running into, and everybody I know seems to keep running into, is that the GPs, because medicine is becoming so advanced now, can't actually do anything for them. So it's basically you go to the GP to find out roughly the GP's first job seems to be to make sure that you leave and don't come back. That seems to be their first job. If you persist and you don't fall for that, their job then seems to be, or if you've got a good GP who's not going to be obstructive in the first place, their job seems to be to work out which hospital department to send you to. So, like, is it a neurological problem? Is it a physio problem? You know, that stuff like that.
Yep.
So the reason to have a general practitioner at all seems to be shrinking and shrinking. Yet they keep trying, as you say, because the NHS is so resistant to any modular change. Instead of just going, well, hang on, why don't we just have, say, an advanced nurse go, that looks like a bone problem, we'll send you to the specialist for that, and hiring more specialists, they're actually just hiring more and more GPs who can't possibly know everything they need to know.
Yeah, that's why they're trying not to hire specialists, because a specialist knows everything about that one subject. So your GP has to know about a whole array of things so that they can signpost you to the right person. They're not supposed to just get rid of you. If they're getting rid of you, they're not doing their job. At which point that becomes a significant event, and then they can get fired for that.
On paper that happens, but like a lot of stuff, it's like the amount of time it takes just to get simple diagnoses. A lot of the time, it's like they're very obviously being obstructive, or they just don't know what they're talking about. And it's like,
if you have a major issue with a doctor, you can go to the PAG, which is the patient group, and they can then raise it with the actual practices.
The problem is, though, that you have to then still use that practice. So people don't do that. Patients.
I guess, like, maybe where you are, probably you only have one practice. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, this is a funny thing, is it is postcode dictated as well. So you can't go to a nurse practice if you're in the wrong postcode.
Yeah, I know. I'm stuck with a rubbish doctor at the moment.
I'm still just annoyed that this is even an idea, personally, because a doctor is supposed to be able to see you regardless. And the whole reason why she's doing this is not for the patient's benefit. Because you remember, this is nothing to do with the patient's benefit. This is all to do with the doctor's benefit. And I'm all for looking after doctors and whatnot, but not when the service is dictated to helping the doctor. The service is there to help the patient, not the doctor.
But you've got a huge drain on the NHS. You've got the people they call the worried well. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but they go and see the doctor anyway.
Sure, no, I completely understand.
And that's taking away a huge amount of work.
No, I completely understand, and that's why I said at the beginning, my pretense was that if it's for people that are for repeat prescriptions, and those type of people can also go in, the hypochondriacs and whatnot of the world, could also be able to use that and be referred to it if necessary. But the thing is, the system in this case is not designed for the patient. This system in itself that she's prescribing and is going for the story is designed to benefit her. The story is about helping her because she's a single mum and a worker.
The NHS actually does a lot of programs for doctors who are single mums.
Yeah, I don't disbelieve it, especially when it comes to the form of being able to look after your children into child daycare and things like that. I don't disbelieve it. But the whole story, the reason why I'm so annoyed, it's not because that I dislike the NHS. It's not because I dislike even her, the doctor. I don't dislike any of this. It's the fact that this system is now being pushed to be able to help the doctor, not help the patient. It's the National Health Service, not the National Doctor Service.
We do have to keep our doctors in practice, though. How would you suggest they do it?
By going into practice.
Which is what most of them do.
Yeah, but I'm specifically talking about her. See,
I wouldn't have a problem. I know she seems to be a bit selfish, but I wouldn't have a problem seeing a doctor online. I mean, obviously, if I did have a lump, I would want someone to actually physically poke it.
Well, let's say that you have all the symptoms of a cold, but the only thing that needs to be sorted out is the fact that you might actually have pneumonia. And the thing is, the doctor can't do any tests or anything else like that because you're online.
I think maybe they might have like a signposting thing, so it depends on how severe your case is and whether or not you have to actually physically see a doctor. That's why I say the NHS doesn't actually have a model for doing online consultations.
No, I understand, but this is the process of it being, as crumplepoint already said, this is the process of putting it to the public to see how the public reacts. And if the public reacts in a positive way, then it has an opportunity for being rolled out on the NHS as a national service. And I wouldn't want that. That does not benefit anybody. It will also have
the reverse effect for doctors as well, because again, like I said about they had that prescribing nurse issue that I mentioned. But like, if you even look at the NHS, if you even look at the NHS 24 system, there's been a few times I've actually just phoned them up for some advice on painkillers. Like, is this compatible with this type stuff? Or like just a quick way to, not use a painkiller, but like a joint problem or something. It's just like, is there a way to like alleviate the pain I'm having without taking more painkillers? Yeah. And they've sent people out anyway. Like we just want to send somebody around to check you out. And it's just like, I was fine with that. That's fine. Like if you want to just, if they're insisting on having somebody come around and check me out, that is fine from a purely selfish point of view. But the fact is that the NHS 24 system is designed to save manpower. So how many people are they doing that for? In which case, why not just have more manpower? Because if you're going to if you try to save manpower, but you're actually still using the manpower, then it's just a new program with no actual result. And I fear that this would be the same issue, because it'd be like, oh wait, shit, this actually sounds kind of serious, but it might just be the flu. We don't know. Okay, you're on the internet. We're going to send somebody out anyway. Like I could see it backfiring really badly.
I mean, the process of the idea, as B's already tried to describe, the idea is a good idea. The fact is, though, the story is not doing it for the benefit of the patients, which is the point that the doctors are supposed to be there for. It's the reason why you become a doctor. You don't become a doctor necessarily just for the money. You come there to be able to help people. I'm not saying that you need to give up your life or anything else like that with it either. But the story itself is completely and utterly on the side of saying, well, it's benefiting this doctor's perceived health structure, even though it's a case of we've all got to go to work. We've all got to leave the house. She's not now doing that and having consultancies in her house. That's just weird to me. It just doesn't benefit anybody bar the doctor.
Is she actually working for the NHS? Is that what she's doing?
I don't think that she is, to be honest with you, but it's still being put out by the BBC, so it's still going to be an opinion piece to see how it reacts with people.
Well, they do have to move into the modern age.
Yeah, it still means that they have to look after their patients and not their doctors, though.
Well, again, that's why my modernising thing is to do with I think we use the term signposting, right? I think they need more specialists, not less. And they need somebody there to do the signposting, but what they really need is more specialists, because medicine is becoming constantly more specialised.
The problem with specialists is then you end up with 1,000 neurosurgeons and no one who does dermatology or stomach pains or something like that. There's so many different specialities. You need a good mix of each. Otherwise, you end up with an overflow of one thing. And especially if you get it in one area and you need it in a different area, then you need to move them around as well.
Yeah, but
avoided in any system.
Well, even easier than that. It's a case of you're saying that with specialities that you think that people are going to go into one form of speciality. The thing is that we have tons of specialists at this moment in time that do completely and utterly amazing things with all the things that they want to do. The thing is that people that go into specializations go into it because they've either have been thought that it's a good career prospect for them and that's what they want to do, or other people have said and decided that it might be a good prospect for them. It's the same thing that would happen in a more of a freer market if you just let the doctors decide what they wanted to do to specialize in. Just because we say we want specialized doctors doesn't mean that you're going to stop the fact of having a general practitioner.
You've got a serious lack of general practitioners, and keeping them, they call it retention. There's no retaining doctors anymore. The doctors that you have are all approaching retirement age. They're doing a huge piece of work to watch how many we're going to lose due to retirement each year, so we can try and impact towards that. I remember Mr. Hunt said that we would be getting 5,000 overseas doctors. Well, that never happened.
Sure.
And last year, I think we only recruited 2,000 new GPs, and they will only stay for about 5 years because they will go off to other places. They will have children and they will stop being GPs because
Sure.
you have to keep up with your skill sets. If you lose your
Sure.
skill set, you lose your license.
That's
Well, do you
what
not-
I'm saying though, is like they're trying to modernize, and that's the problem they face, right? So their solution to the problem creates more of a problem, because the professions that exist across all disciplines are like nurses and paramedics. They're just kind of universal. And then you have, in a hospital, that is, and then you have all the consultants and stuff who specialize. But then you've got these GPs, and they're like, the GPs are consistently floundering and out of their depth because they can't keep up. They go to medical school, they finish their medical degree, they come out, they do get some continued training, but it's like the more medicine advances, the less they can keep abreast of it all. So the way I would combat that is I would get people, you're going to get better retention for specialists because you're going to go ideally into a specialization that interests you, and it will keep you there rather than a general practice which might not have any variety to it. And the other thing is that what they've started doing again in Scotland is they're actually now sending out emails to graduates saying that anybody with, I don't know if it's any degree, but at least any life sciences degree, needs to just do, I think it's 2 years of some kind of basic training, and they could become a GP. It's like, that person could be a civil engineer. That's not the answer to the problem. That's how they're trying to.
That's not correct. So after they do medical school, they then choose their speciality. They have to choose the GP speciality, which they go through training, and they will continue getting training, and they will be appraised every year of their career. And if they don't, they need to do updates on education as well. So I think they need to get 150 points each year to continue to be a general practitioner.
Can I ask you a question, please, B?
Yeah.
Do you think that the reason why the retention is so low for general practitioners is because that there isn't much area for the general practitioners to go into? The reason why I say that is because it's fine saying that all people are going to retire, but if you don't have a general practitioner or a general practice to practice in, you can't keep your license because you're not doing the hours. So you lose your speciality until you go into work in a hospital.
That's not true for all doctors. So for like mothers, they do part-time, and they have to get certain learning days
Sure.
paid for by their practice to do that.
Sure.
A problem a lot of them do is they go and they become a partner. Now you have to run a business. Now just because you've got a medical brain doesn't mean you know how to run a business.
Of course.
And a lot of them fail within a couple of years.
Sure. That wasn't a point I was making, though, B.
Yeah.
The point that I was making was that even if you were to, and we're not, but even if you were to get the doctors up to a higher standard, if you don't have places for the doctors to go into, then their qualifications are null and void anyway. And we don't have enough general practices in general.
There are enough practices, there aren't enough doctors. That's the issue that a lot of practices have. And what happens when a practice is closed is they then get all of those
Patients
go into them as well, and they get overflowed.
Sure.
What some doctors do is they become sessional doctors. So a sessional doctor is a doctor that can work in any practice.
Sure.
But they won't get education days from those practices.
No, I understand that. But what I'm trying to point out is that if you cut the number of practices, no matter how many general practitioners, GPs that you put into the circuit, they will never be able to fit into the general practices, because if you've got 4 rooms for doctors and you've already got 4 doctors, then that general practice cannot get more doctors into that practice because it's already full.
Okay, my practice has about 18 rooms and about 4 doctors on every time. So there are enough practices, there aren't enough doctors.
Sure. And in my practice, my doctors has around about 5 rooms and they have 4 doctors. But that's not the point that I'm making still.
Well,
Just because
going back to the specialization thing as well, though, and this is why you're not getting any retention, partly, is as the youngest person here, I think by quite a margin. All the people I know who went into medicine, none of them wanted to be anything less than a specialist. And they wanted to be a general practitioner. They didn't want to be general practitioners, and probably if they were told that's all they could be, they probably wouldn't continue with the medical degree. The reason being that they wanted to, it takes so many years to get to that level that they wanted to be doing a specialized subject that they could continue in as a field, because they were looking at so much time out of their life and so much in the way of like student loans and stuff that they were like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm not going to become a GP for the sake of a couple of years either side. And so that'll be another problem that there's nothing enticing about being a GP. And again, I still mechanically can't see if a nurse can do, I've seen nurses get trained up to the level where they're just under a GP, and they can do that signposting you're talking about. So I really don't think more GPs are the answer. I think that what they're doing with nurses is a good idea.
Yeah, I know. I agree. They need more nurses in practices. That would be great. But most of them can't prescribe, and they've got a whole different system of learning as well. What was CSG's point?
It doesn't really matter anyway, because the main crux of the actual point was that you're not going to be able to see more general practitioners by working at home if you're not getting them into the actual doctors themselves anyway.
What do you mean?
If you were to be able to prescribe this online service and say that it was able to be run out by the NHS, if you still don't have the general practitioners, then the service still doesn't work, which is the point I was making for the original story.
The service doesn't work because it can't sustain the population. That's what they're trying to fix.
By doing what? Putting general practitioners onto online services instead of putting them into actual practices.
They're not putting them onto online services.
But that's what the story was, B. That's what we're talking about.
I know that's what the story was, but you're... Never mind.
No, continue, because obviously I'm missing something. So please let me know.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll let you guys continue. I'll see you later.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Interesting.
All I can say is we have a different understanding of how things go. She has a more in-depth knowledge because she's worked with it. That's why I thought bringing her on would be a good idea.
No, it was a good idea. I love talking to people. It has nothing to do with that. I just think that our wires are crossed. B was saying that there aren't enough general practitioners, which is fine. I agree with her. But the problem, the solution isn't let's put an online service together where the general practitioners are not even in a practice. All you're doing is putting everything online rather than having a practice. You're not actually benefiting the society. All you're doing is ticking a box that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
That's all I was getting at. That's all.
Yeah, no. Oh well, is what it is. Like I say, my opinion, I can see a whole bunch of abuses being heaped on this. And if they don't think it through, which I don't think they will, because even though they're the experts, let's be fair, they're not necessarily that good at this shit. They're not going to think it through. It's going to be abused, and that's just going to give the NHS even more crap to deal with when people start pointing out all the mistakes they're making.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I was trying to say. I mean, if you're trying to diagnose somebody online, whether you're a good general practitioner, whether you're a specialist, whether you're anything, if you can't see what's going on, you can misdiagnose quite easily because you can't feel the right temperature, you can't feel you can't do the things. So if you're trying to say that there's no general practitioners, which I agree there isn't, then forcing them or putting them into an online service is not going to benefit anybody, not even the general practitioners, which the whole point of the story was them saying that they feel better because they get more time at home with their children, which means that they're not focusing on the patients.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
all I was meaning.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from.
Anyway,
Okay.
I think that we've been on that story for long enough, but let's carry on bitching on the NHS and let's talk about an actual NHS report that has completely and utterly condemned transgender people, apparently. Oh, no, sorry. Not transgender people. The actual people that were pushing the idea of trans onto people. Yeah. Interesting. So I have no idea what's happened to my internet because that's just gone weird. But anyway. So, child sex change clinic chief resigns after damning reports. So, a governor of the NHS Trust in charge of England's flagship child sex change clinic has resigned in protest amidst allegation it was, and this is quotations from the report, fast-tracking young people into gender reassignment as a result of pressure from highly politicized LGBT campaigners. Interesting on that, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I mean, let's be fair. The whole thing with the transgendering of children, it's just no. Okay, I can't be bothered to try and find better words. Just no. Stop it. You know. I know. Let kids be kids. Let them worry about their gender later on. For fuck's sake, come on.
It's like you've read the story already. There's a leading psychologist that basically says exactly the same as what you do.
Well, my take on it is perhaps absurdly simple, but what age can you drink?
16 to, 18. Let's go with that.
And what age can you vote?
Around about 18.
Okay, so you're not allowed any
Scotland.
discussion of gender reassignment until then. Case closed.
Oh,
Because
it
you
depends.
can't consent to it legally.
It depends. Yeah. It depends because you can get married at the age of 16 with your parents' consent. You can also have sex at the age of 16. You can also join the army before the age of 18 in circumstances.
Yep.
So
you're still a minor in all those cases, though. You still are a minor. So even if we just take the 16-year-old route, you're incapable of consent before then, so you can't change your gender before then. Simple.
I kind of can't argue with the 16 point, to be fair. I think that's probably the cut-off point myself.
If that's not the case, then we've been lied to, and the consent thing isn't the reason these things are 16. There is another reason, because if consent is the reason, then it has to be one age for all these things.
No, yeah. I agree. I've used this argument before, where it's a case of if you think that children can consent from the age of 6 up to 12 or whenever to be able to have gender reconforming surgeries or life-changing and body-altering hormone replacements, then it's not an argument that I agree with, but it's one that is actually completely and utterly an equivalent for. Then they can have sex with pedophiles because then they can consent to sex.
There's another issue as well, right? There's a lot of issues. There's another issue, which is if I'll try to get this accurate. With these LGBT pressure groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their job is to normalize LGBT shit, right?
We got it, yeah.
It's fairly normalized now. But there's a lot of money, a lot of salaries kicking about, a lot of jobs, and a lot of media time. And what do they think people will do if we reach 100% gay acceptance? What do you think they'll do? Disband? This is an entirely political thing. This is not a moral thing anymore. This is a political and indeed a business thing, in my opinion.
Well, we saw that in an earlier story, didn't we? With the fact of Owen Jones picking up the "you're not ladylike."
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And another point I would actually want to hear you guys' opinion on, is if this were any other practice where the risk of medical complications in the form of hormone disorders or bone breakages because you make your bones thinner with the hormones,
Or cancer.
or just the comorbid suicide rate that they haven't actually been able to separate from the lifestyle or whatever you want to call it yet. They've not been able to separate the two and discuss them separately. So presumably they're linked. So imagine if everybody, well, not everybody, but 1 in 4, I think it is, people that took marijuana committed suicide 4 years after taking it. It would be a class A substance. You would be, life in prison for possessing it, blah, 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 blah. Same with alcohol, same with any kind of lifestyle, like a sport or something like that. It would be prohibited. But for some reason, when we're talking about giving massive amounts of extremely potent hormones to small children who can't give consent, and the comorbid suicide rate with that, we're not allowed to discuss that for fear of hate mongering. Like, it's absolutely political machinations.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. In fact, even the psychologists in this actually say that it's to do with peer groups and everything else like that. These are quotation marks, by the way. Adolescent and childhood is a time when people are developing socially and biologically, a time when young people are identifying with different groups and with male and female aspects of themselves, direct quotation. Mr. Evans told the BBC Today programme Monday. Quotations from him again. There is pressure from the child who is in a distressed state. There is pressure from the family and the peer group and from the pro-trans lobbies. And all of this puts pressure on the clinician who may want to help the individual to resolve their distressed state by going along with a quick solution. Still direct quotations as well. There is a lot at stake here as these decisions have far-reaching consequences, end quote. A consultation therapist, as in Mr. Evans, warned, speaking after he told the Sunday Times that GIDS, which is the abbreviation for what we just talked about above, which is the main group that this is, was trying to dismiss, quotation, or undermine, close quotation, concerns raised by its own medical staff in GIBS that are designed to help people transition in a leaked review compiled last year. So Dr. David Bell, who drew up the report, warned children were at risk of long-term damage, quotation, as a result of the NHS clinics, quotation, inability to stand up to pressure, close quotation, for transgender activist groups such as Mermaids UK, which has been criticised for false claims that denying, this is their terminology from Breitbart, so this is not me saying it, gender-bending medical treatments which have irreversible effects on young patients. Fertility causes gender-confused youths to commit suicide. I would say that that's probably a massive factor, but this is the Breitbart actually editorializing onto other people's points. This was not in any sort of formal quotation, so I don't know if this is true or not. Staff governor at the time of compiling the report, Dr. Bell says clinicians felt children were being put onto life-changing drugs without significant assessment of the role played by their personal histories and by wider psychological issues in parents. And by the way, that's apparently a direct quotation. Apparently. Gender dysphoria. Nothing that some youths view gender reassignment as a solution, quotation, to quotation again, multiple problems such as historic child abuse in the family, bereavement, homophobia, and a very significant incidence of autism spectrum disorder, closed quotation mark. This is from the Dr. Bell report, by the way. which I think is very, very interesting. Does anybody want to quote on that at all or talk on that at all?
Well, I will, but only in a broader point. I actually want to ask CP something. He indicated that he agreed with Voice of One's suggestion about putting the parents of these poor kids into prison. Now, before I go off on that, would you mind, explaining how you think that this will help?
Because they're committing child abuse, and so these people can't be trusted with their children because they're committing the most abhorrent psychological abuse I can recall seeing in a very long time, and you can't send kids into that environment safely without constant supervision. So the easiest thing to do would be to send them to live with their grandparents or something and to prosecute the parents.
Okay, now you actually...
Can I quickly, just to give you, so that people know I'm not being a totalitarian nut job, could you imagine if you had a perfectly normal, healthy baby boy and his mother would just, I don't know, attack him and run him down and try and convince him from, let's say, the age of 2 that he was in fact a girl? Would that child have a fighting chance when presented with a doctor who's saying, oh yes, I think you might have a transgender son? The child would have no chance, and the parent would have a lifelong form of control over that child. And even if transgenderism wasn't an option, the child would be basically brainwashed. So it would be nothing other than abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd never know that it was abuse.
The thing I would like to add to what Mr. Point was saying, but I'd like to put it in a different light. Say, for instance, that you have a mother or a father that's a very, very heavy drinker, and he's very, very abusive towards his children. Doesn't necessarily hit them, but very, very abusive, knocks them down all the time, tells them that they're not going to be anything and everything else like that. And he does this for years and years until the child starts hurting themselves and everything else like that. The thing is, we would phone child protection services for that. That man would then probably go to prison for child abuse. That child will then be taken away from that father. Why is this any different? The only difference is that the people that are doing transgender or pushing the narrative in general, are actually physically hurting as well as psychologically hurting their children. That's the only difference in that scenario.
Okay. Reason I pointed it out was, and the reason I was actually starting to agree with CP was the fact that Voice was saying send the parents to prison. Now, I'm not disagreeing with the child abuse aspect of what's going on there. I actually fully agree with you. But as someone who's actually been through the childcare system, I positively want to throw up at the word care in there, but okay. It's not necessarily.
Can I just add in? The reason I said jail was not flippant, because I am also, I've not been through said child care system, but I know how bad it is, and so I would never suggest. And I've also heard the cases of people having their children unlawfully taken from them. So I would never propose lightly prosecuting and imprisoning a parent or parents.
Yeah.
So I was meaning, like, I take this extremely seriously. That would be I'm also very pro-family, so that's a last resort for me.
Okay. And like I say, the reason I pulled you up on it was because of the parents going to jail, but you did actually clarify and give the children to the grandparents. Now, the reason I had a problem with it was, simply put, can you imagine the sheer number of kids that are going to be added to the child care system, which is already stretched into an absolute silly mode? It's the basic idea is good. Yes, the parents should be punished for what they're doing to the child. But you could also look at it as the child's being punished if the parents are taken away. That's all I was actually trying to bring up.
No, I completely agree. That's why I reserve that for the most extreme of solutions. But the thing is that, like I say, you can't get away from something like that. That is abuse of a special and bizarre kind. It's kind of, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of terrorists that radicalize their children. Like, the abuse isn't as clear cut as hitting them. It's very strange and insidious and difficult to pin down. And yeah, as I said, I would prioritize always them being removed to another relative over going into the system, because then you have always got the danger that people, like, you could imagine if some insidious totalitarian regime did get into power, they would view that as a godsend, having the ability to just like chuck parents in prison left, right, and center, and send all the kids to re-education camps. So it's always a last resort for me, and I just see this as abuse almost beyond that which I can fathom, because it actually destroys the identity of the child and their body with complete legal impunity and indeed cheerleading from society. And I don't see how, beyond prosecution, I don't see how you can make an example against this, because the abuse becomes difficult to detect and normalized and incentivized all at once.
Okay, no, fair, mate. As I say, I just wanted to bring up the fact that sending the kids into care is not by any fucking stretch of the imagination a good thing. It's a necessity, not a valid option.
Exactly.
Well,
I just want a quick question. I just want a quick, question point. To obviously both of you. If you were being physically and mentally abused, or mentally abused in this instance, where literally your whole identity is being broken down and completely and utterly changed. Now, I do understand that the care system is not amazing, it's not great, and there are abuse systems that go on in general. But if you don't take that child out of that situation, you are condemning that child to the situation. Now, yes, there is a chance that they could go into a worse situation by going into care, but there's also a chance that they will go into a better situation. Do you keep them in the same area where you know for that they are going to be mentally and possibly physically abused, or do you take them out and give them a chance of having a better life?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm now going to go against everything I've just said, but you are correct. My argument was, don't necessarily think that the care system is the perfect answer.
I'm glad you brought that up, because people talk about that and they're not aware of the horrors that go on in the care system, and they just throw that around as a solution willy-nilly. For example, I don't even think kids should be taken off alcoholic parents, because an alcoholic parent is probably better than the care system in a lot of cases. Not every case. In some cases, it's probably a necessity, but you know what I mean? Like, just being a horrific parent is not enough to warrant me saying, "Oh yeah, put them into care," because I know how. I don't even know, but I have an inkling of how awful it is. So when I say put the person in jail, it's extreme. That's how extreme I consider this. As I said, I do consider it, because it's politically motivated as well. I do consider it on par with radical terrorists making their children radicalized, and that's, you can sue me for that if you want. That's my opinion on it. And I'm actually glad you brought that up, Jenson Quinn, because people really do think that the care system is just this band-aid, it'll be fine, lock the bastards up, silly system. And it's not.
Yeah. I'm glad you saw where I was coming from, mate. I wasn't directly, just jumping on you. It's just too many people think, oh, just put the kid into care, it'll be fine. Like, feck will it. The care system is beyond a joke. It actually makes most other systems that they've got set out there look positively good. And while I accept that not every single care home is going to be full of pedos and weirdos and whatnot, the problem is too many are.
Yes, I agree.
That's the problem.
No, I definitely, completely not agree. It is, for me, it's the chance. It's always the chance that they're going to have a better life, especially when it's this, as points already made, when it's this level of physical and possible, mental and possible physical abuses going to happen to them. completely and utterly denying your identity and completely and utterly denying your own choices to be able to grow in the way that you want to. You're literally being dictated and broken down to being what other people want you to be from a young age, regardless of what your own personal feelings are towards it.
It's sexual abuse as well, all in one. To add to what you're saying, it's sexual abuse too, because if you wake up and somebody's taking your genitals away, I would consider that a form of sexual abuse.
Yeah,
I suppose. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I could argue against it, but there's not much point. I do see your point on it. The sexual abuse can be the lack of not being able to have sexual intercourse afterwards. So I do understand your point.
Yeah, because if you look at things like, I'll just use an example from fiction because it's less, well, touchy. If you look at something like Red Dragon, where when the kid was going through puberty, his mother or grandmother or whoever would like beat him senseless for displaying puberty-related stuff, that would be considered sexual abuse. She's not actually molesting him, but it's still sexual abuse, and that's kind of where I was getting with that. It's like the parents might not be like penetrating the child or whatever, but they're taking off or adding genitals to them, which in my opinion is sexual abuse.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, as long as you understand, I wasn't directly coming at you, dude. I just wanted to make the point that don't think that putting the parents in prison is necessarily going to be the greatest thing for the kid. Now, I understand that leaving the kid in that situation is terrible, okay? It just goes without bloody saying. But as B put it, putting children into care should be a last resort. How about educating the parents, giving them a chance to change their toxic behaviour? Yes. The only problem
they do that with Islamic extremists as well. They try and re-educate them first, so that's fine, because that's what I wanted to compare it to, because it's politically motivated extremism. It's a different kind, but it is. And
well, it's ideological dogma, isn't it? It's rhetoric
because the thing, and you know, it's fed into them because they chuck out any. For example, you hear about stories from right-wing or conservative gay people all the time getting chucked out of the LGBTQ plus IAZ movement. So it is politically motivated, because if you're chucking out people based on political affiliation, it's not actually a rights movement anymore. And so the fact that those pressure groups are the ones doing this, and the fact they derive a benefit from it, i.e. they perpetuate themselves by having this happen, I see it as a political movement, and I would say it's akin to terrorist extremism, and do whatever you do with those people. And if it's re-education first and then prison, fine. You know, whatever you do with them.
Yeah. No,
and I'm glad, Jenson. I'm glad. I knew you weren't having a go. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I hear all the time when people go on about like drug addict parents and stuff like that. It's, oh yeah, just take the kids off them and put them in care. So it's like, ask the kid first, right? Let them stay in care for a week, and then see if they want to go home or they want to go into care before you start throwing around shit like that. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because it is a blind spot in our society.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Great conversation, lads. Very good. I'm going to continue reading this story because there's a couple of other little bits in it as well that I'm quite interested in. I might skip the TikTok one and go straight to the MPs, or do we want to miss the MPs one and go to TikTok?
Do the MPs. We love taking piss out of MPs.
TikTok.
TikTok is basically something that's very, very similar to like Snapchat and WhatsApp and Instagram.
MPs. Do the MPs.
The reason why I say TikTok is because it's related to the children, because TikTok have been fined the highest fine for releasing child's data that is under the age of 13.
Ah, okay.
So that's the reason why I put. I'll try and read the story quick and see if we can skim over the TikTok one and focus more on the MPs.
All right.
And the observation that children seem to have been coached, in quotation marks, by the actual report, online by activist groups. So not even necessarily by their own parents, but the groups themselves are actually trying to coach, quotation, the actual children that may be going through bereavement issues, homophobic issues from their own family, or even forms of autism. Remember, This is not me saying this. This is not Breitbart saying this. This is Dr. Bell who wrote the report on this.
I think I might have actually read this report because I remember reading something recently. They have, in regards to autism research, they have, let me get this right. It was thought for years that only boys could get autism because the disease or condition or personality type, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what
condition.
The condition presents differently, dramatically differently in boys and girls, even though the underlying mechanisms are the same, which is further proof, by the way, that men and women are inherently different because you give them the same condition with the same mechanisms and they manifest so differently that people think girls don't get it. There's a bit of proof for you. So they recently found out that, you know, girls do get it, and that's where basically the explosion in this thing called borderline personality disorder comes from, because a lot of women with autism are being diagnosed incorrectly with that or bipolar or something. And so what they found was that the latest mutation of this, before they started to look seriously into the women with autism thing, was that women, because they kind of present as, well, autistic, so they're like antisocial and basically more male behaviors in a lot of ways, the system was trying to put them down as transgender when they're not. So they've got this massive number of women having foisted on them gender reassignment when in fact they need treatment for autism. And I read that like the end of last year, start of this year. So it might be the same report.
It's a possibility.
It's astounding what they're getting away with.
Well, let's have a look at what they're actually saying towards the end of this. They put, after a review into the respected consultant psychiatrist's findings, remember, Dr. Bell is a psychiatrist, so to remember that for this next part, okay? By Tavistock and Portman's medical director, Dinesh Sinha, said that the clinic was, quotation, safe and operating in line with the best care in the field intentionally. The NHS Trust issued a statement attacking claims in the leaked report as unsubstantiated. Yes, thank you. And alleging Dr. Bell, remember, psychiatrist, had no expertise in this field. That's a bit worrying that a psychiatrist doesn't have any field in gender dysphoria, isn't it?
You'd think it'd have something, you know.
Well, considering that it's still in the DCM, it's under gender dysphoria. You think it'd be under psychiatry, wouldn't you? As a definition and profession, maybe, I don't know, expertise. I don't know.
It just sounds like the worst kind of like Marxist, communist shit, doesn't it? Like, oh yes, he might be a psychiatrist, but he is not a proletariat, therefore he has no expertise in workers' matters. You know, like,
yeah. It just seems a way of discrediting. The thing is that so many people have come out. I mean, you can go to the link on this page from Breitbart. The great thing about Breitbart is, apart from these type of stories, is that they set all the hyperlinks in. So you can go and read the direct report if you want to. You can go and read what people have said. This is the one thing that I do like about Breitbart, apart from the fact that it's right-wing. This was despite Dr. Sinha, remember the person who's tried to condemn this, backing some of the concerns raised, interesting, with his review highlighting staff being forced to work in, quotation, from Dr. Sinha, an atmosphere of significant persecution created by pro-trans campaign groups and admitting clinicians' fears that children had insignificant understanding of the effects of treatment on their fertility when placed on puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. This is from the person who has literally just said, no, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but I do agree with this part.
Yeah, and if people don't think this is going to be abused, just look at psychiatry in general, by the way, where you've got young children being put on amphetamines, antidepressants, and antipsychotics. The companies that make them don't recommend them for children, and they're often not allowed as on license, but the NHS could get away with prescribing them as an off license or an off label or something like that. They call it. B could correct us in the comments, but yeah, like, so if they do that with something as common as antidepressants, you can bet your arse they'll do it with this cocktail of.
Oh, I like that. I like that. In a letter, which again is hyperlinked if anybody wanted to go and read it, to the Sunday Times, noting the extraordinary increase, which is a quotation mark for a group of academics that have all co-signed this letter, in the number of child sex change referrals in Britain, a figure which has risen, and a hyperlink to the actual percentage and everything, 2,500%. 2,500% in less than 10 years. A group of academics specializing in the field of gender slammed the Trust's attempt to, quotation, discredit Dr. Bell, asserting that, quotation, the health of thousands of children is at stake.
CSG, so as you know, B in chat is saying that she can't see the article. So if you're going to present it, you might want to present it to everybody so as they got the option of the article, mate.
God damn it.
Yep. Or just link it in live chat, that'll do.
No, I will show it to everyone and nobody can ever be shown talking ever again. Can everybody see it now on the screen?
One sec. Yep, I can see it on the Hangout screen, and obviously they'll be seeing it in a few seconds.
That's good. My Google's not working very well at the minute, so that's always a good thing. Always a good thing. Never mind. Right. I don't think that we need to carry on with that one, do we? We can move on to. We'll move on to the MPs ones. Anybody that wants to read the TikTok one can read it later. It is linked in the description box below, so please go across and do that.
And it's not presenting you, dude. We've only got CP's 8 ball.
Yeah, as I said, my Google's not going very well. Instead of doing all that, then, ladies and gents, what I'm going to do is end it.
Dude, that's a bit extreme, man. Put the gun down, for God's sake, man.
But sorry, I need to be gender reassigned. But if I can't show the article, as much as I like reading for everybody, there's not much point in showing it because I like people to read along so they know that I'm not taking things out of context and everything.
If you try screen sharing it and then click on your little square on the Hangout, and it should work.
It's because my Google's overheating, my friend, and I had bought an external hard drive where I put my Google put all of Google Chrome onto it. But unfortunately, my missus decided to accidentally drop it, and yeah, I won't worry.
Accidentally, my arse. She's just fed up of you staying up till stupid o'clock doing live streams. That's what it is.
Confirm or deny.
There we go. That'll do. Right, let's do this then.
Oh, there it is.
So MPs granted a huge. It's quite a significant pay rise. I wouldn't put huge in. I mean, it's over dramatising everything, but it's a big pay rise to swell yearly wage to nearly £80,000 a year for a basic MP salary. That's not cabinet ministers. That's your local MP that sits in the House of Commons that gets 80 grand a year. Yeah.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Yep, they will receive a 2. Okay, it is a huge pay rise. To be fair, it's a 2.7 pay rise to 79,468.
You know what's crazy is that's probably just in line with inflation or something.
Oh, inflation is 1.6, 1.7.
Yeah, bullshit.
Well, that's what it
What about
says.
the rest of it?
That's what it says.
Yeah, I know, but they're fucking idiots. That when you're taking into account inflation, right? It depends how far back you want to go. But if you consider that we used to be the pound sterling because it was attached to silver, we're at absolutely astoundingly crazy, into the thousands of percents of inflation. If you don't want to go all Austrian economics on people and just go in the last like 10 years or so, you have to look at the difference between like things like the price of a car, right? If you want a hatchback in 2004, say, you could get one for $9,000. $9,000 will get you fuck all now, and not only that, but the car parts are cheaper. So you've got actual inflation that people see. The car parts are all cheaper, but you've also got loads of shit like if you buy something from the supermarket, not only has the price gone up, but the product has shrunk. So they count the rise in price as inflation, but what they forget to do is to add to that the percentage by which the portion has shrunk, and then you have real inflation. And if you go by those metrics, inflation sitting somewhere just now at around like 4.5%, and like back in 2012 and stuff like that, it was at 9%.
I know that inflation is a lot higher than what they say, but
well, this is where the LIBOR rigging thing came into it, because they had to rig all these different mechanisms to make it look like inflation and currencies were doing better than they were.
Yeah,
it's astounding the monkeying that they do with the figures. So that MP salary wouldn't be as bad if everybody was seeing a wage rise in line with inflation, but nobody gets a wage rise in line with inflation. Well, it's always behind inflation, and then the MPs give themselves the corrected wage, and that shows you how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, the reason why I'm a little bit outraged by the MPs having a bit of a rise is the fact that it is at 2.7%, where nobody else is going to get anywhere near that. I mean, I would love to have a 2.7 pay rise on whatever I earn. I'm sure everybody else would as well.
Be nice.
No, it would be. So they will receive a 2.7 pay rise to £79,468 from 77 whatever. Can't be asked. Ministers will be paid their usual allowance on top. So in other words, if they're cabinet ministers or anything else like that, or shadow cabinet ministers, then they also get their cabinet ministry on top of it as well. With Prime Minister Theresa May receiving more than £150,000 a year. The £2,000 hike, effective from April 1st, is well above the current inflation rate of 1.8% on the main consumer price index, the CPI measure. Just last month, the government said teachers' pay in England should be capped at 2% next year. That's the reason why I get a little bit annoyed, because everybody else gets capped and everything else like that. The MPs get way more than what the cap is. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that it's done by an independent group that has no influence from the MPs whatsoever, obviously. But yes, I know it's done by that, but it's still ridiculous. How can an MP
say? That fits into my point, though, because the independent group would say, "Well, this is what inflation's at, so you need your wages adjusted in line with that." The end. Whereas the government decides everybody else's pay, so they just go, "Oh yeah, fuck you. You can just deal with the inflation." So it's actually the independent group is probably giving you the correct figure. We should get them to do everybody's salaries.
It would be nice. It would be nice. Which is the point now in which I was going through, which is the fact that the MPs themselves will rely on the fact that an independent group says that they should get 2.7 pay rise, where the government themselves will go, yeah, I know inflation is apparently set at 1.8%, apparently, but at the same time, I don't think anybody should get over a 2% pay rise, so fuck you all. Oh, you don't want to know why we've almost got a 3% pay rise? Shh, nothing's happening.
Do you know, I wouldn't mind if they actually got this pay rise, if they could, I don't know, actually go through with the things that they're meant to be doing. Cough, cough, Brexit, cough, cough.
Oh, it would be nice if the MPs that were elected to carry out the will of the people actually carried out the will of the people, but then again, that's a form of democracy, and I suppose that would be too much to ask living in a social democracy, wouldn't it?
True, that is a racist thing to suggest that people do. I apologise.
How dare you?
See, this is another thing, though, right? Because then Corbyn the Red can come along and go, I shall boost everybody in the country by 4,000%, and we'll just borrow the money to do it, right? And then what that does is that puts inflation up. And I would actually argue that putting inflation up is worse than no pay rise, because you're still stealing from the public, and the borrowing of money increases inflation. So the thing is, we've got the Tories on one side going, oh yeah, you're not getting a pay rise. By the way, I don't think teachers should get a pay rise. I think they're overpaid and they should be beaten. But that other civil servants may vary. But the other thing is that...
Oh, it's funny you say that. Did you know your MPs, your Scottish MPs, are only around about 68 to 69 grand?
Do bloody right as well.
No, but what I mean is the disparity between the fucking two of them. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that they probably should be, all of them should probably be on the 60 grand's worth a year or just under 70. But it just shows you that we're greedy.
Well, it's to do with the cost of living down in London and stuff like that as well. That's
of course it is. Yeah, London's waiting time. Yeah, London's waiting time. Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
But no, the thing with like the MP's salary, I've completely forgotten what I was saying.
Haha, I did it.
Well, if you've forgotten, I'd just like to make a tiny little point. You have looked at which day or date they're actually bringing this out, haven't
April 1st. April 1st, April Fool's Day.
Yeah, just something to think about. Whether or not this is a April Fool's joke that may well cause a complete shitstorm.
I think that's the first or second. That's the start of one of the yearly quarters, though, so it probably is true.
It's actually the start of the financial year in the UK.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay, no, fair play then. Fair play. All right. I was trying to give them a get out here. Give me a break. I was trying.
Yeah, well, tell them to fuck off.
I would have just politely laughed, but I can't stand the MPs to the point where I will sacrifice my sense of humour.
Exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that was what I was saying earlier, though, is like, you know, with you've got the Tories on one side doing the nasty thing of capping people's pay, but like when the Reds come from the other side and pretend they're being your mate, what they're actually doing is robbing you blind. Like, and they say, oh, we'll boost it with either if it's benefits or a pay rise or anything like that, anything that needs higher taxes or higher borrowing, they're actually boosting inflation, which means they're surreptitiously doing the same things as the Tories were doing.
Oh, good word, sir. Good word. We like that word.
I just think big word.
He did use a big word. He did. I just think it's interesting that from 2015, they've almost gone up by 20 grand. Around about 14, 15 grand they've gone up by. That's fucking bad. By how much they've gone up year by year by year by year.
I bet, like I say, I bet you that's in line with inflation. I know that they boosted it up a little bit initially because they were getting rid of the expenses system or whatever. And that was their excuse before, was they had expenses to offset the salary, but then people were like, yeah, but you get a massive salary as well, blah, blah. We all know the expenses scandal. But,
exactly.
So there was a little jump there, which was probably nothing to do with inflation. But after that, I reckon it probably was in line with inflation. Inflation cannot be underestimated. It's astounding how high inflation is.
No, I definitely agree with you. I just, with all the facts of how the world is and the fact of how the whole point of, as Jenson says, Brexit and everything else like that, regardless of if you leave and remain, most people are pissed off and annoyed of how their respective forms of government or their idea of what government should be has acted. And I don't think that they even deserve to have a pay rise. Not because I don't think that they're doing a job or anything else like that requires one, but it's mostly because, well, surely that their job should be done on performance reviews as they're supposed to be public servants. So surely their pay review should not be done by independent groups, but should actually be done by the people. As in, if you vote and how long you stay in should be the number of your pay rise and have a set payment for when you first come in. And the longer that you stay in office, especially when it's how many times you're voted in, should be the increase of the pay rise that you get.
Okay, yeah. Can't disagree.
I still think it's a better idea to bring back the rope.
I say bring back the soap on the rope.
Yeah, no thanks.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, that's the last of the stories, to be fair. I don't think there's much point going through that anymore, apart from the Jeremy Corbyn yesterday announced he will back another referendum. Yeah, that went well.
Whatever.
No,
Yeah.
that went well. It got completely and utterly. Oh no, sorry, not the backing of the referendum. What was it? He put his own idea of his own deal up there, and that got completely and utterly fucking trounced. 45 difference. But yeah, that was fun. Right, I will. Think I will end it here. I think it's been a good, interesting stream with some fuck ups on my end. But Mr. Jenson Quinn, would you like to go first on your final word?
Yep, sure. Okay. MPs, come on, guys. Pull your fingers at your asses. Let's get this over and done with. Let's go. All right. Doctors and their pushing of child transgenderism. Shove your heads up your own asses and go away. Okay, it's just go away. All right, I'm done with you lot. This is freaking ridiculous. And yes, this is my opinion and doesn't necessarily connect to CSG or crumplepoint. You know what? Come for me, bitches. Okay, right. And the rest of it, my God, this world is freaking ridiculous. We have got so many problems and we are ignoring it for silly little things like this. In my not so humble opinion, burn it all down and start again. Okay, your go, guys.
Yep. Mr. Point.
Thank you to our moderate and calm friend there for his mild suggestions. We love you, Jen. But no, general final word material. It's the economy, stupid, I guess. The issue is the lack of freedom. Like, it's the lack of economic freedom and the lack of civic freedom, and all that's happening is people are starting to argue among themselves. And I know that.
Mr. Point, not unless I can't hear anybody again, because
wow.
No, that is actually him, so that's good. Mr. Point, your microphone's fucking up, like really badly.
Yeah, I know what happened. I fucking sat on the wire, didn't I?
Hey, fat ass.
Anyway, yeah, no, I see commies everywhere, and that is my tendency, but I stick by it. And their rule is divide and conquer. And set everybody on each other. And that's all we see. We have no economic freedom and we have no civic freedom. And when people don't have those things, they're at each other's throats. Meanwhile, as we see, the ruling class, the MPs, the ridiculously well-paid class, and they're not even really the ruling class, but they're the gateway. They do what they like, and they live by another set of rules in places we're not allowed to go with money that we can't possess. And I think that people really need to look more towards individualism, not in the Ayn Rand sense of the word, just in the common sense of the word, to use a handy term. And that's we need to strengthen ourselves and each other, and that's how the society is strengthened. We don't go around forcing other people to do shit that they don't want to do because it makes us feel better. That doesn't get anything solved. And the MP's job, as you can see with the whole political and media class with Brexit, is to make sure that we don't know that and that we are at each other's throats constantly. So, yeah, go and check out the real inflation figures, and thank you to CSG for having us on.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming on. I think if you look at every story that we've had on today, well, okay, 90% of the stories that we've had on today, I think the common denominator is corruption. Whether it be Twitter, as we had at the beginning, where it's the case of them banning people because of political pressure, or whether it's a case of the NHS having a condemning report coming out saying that they are being literally forcing children to do something And then the people that have come out to actually say that this is completely and utterly false, agreeing with the same report or aspects of it. Yeah. Then we move on to the governments and things like that, and MPs and everything else like that. And it just, I think the thing that we need to worry about more than anything is that we need to actually look at what we think is going on rather than what people are telling us. Because we need to do our own research. We need to be able to find out what's going on. We need to be able to make sure that people are telling the truth and not trying to censor and completely and utterly keep things the way that they want to keep them. Look at the way that Tommy Robinson has been treated, completely being rejected off of Facebook and PayPal and all the rest of it. And yet, nobody really seems to be batting an eyelid because of the propaganda seems to have been able to get through to people. So nobody really wants to defend a racist, fucking xenophobe, Islamophobic person anymore, even though he's not, by any stretch of the imagination. But besides the point, everything seems to be controlled. Everything is not freedom. Nothing is free. You think that you may have the aspect of being able to go out and buy your own car, as crumplepoint's already alluded to. Most things are not. You are now limited to what you can and cannot do by the aspects of money and by the facts of inflation being going up and everything else like that, which at this point in time, you could argue that that is also a form of corruption. And I think this is the whole point that we need to be looking out for. Every single organization, from the NHS, from the government, down to Twitter, to social media in general, to BBC, to ABC, to NNNBC, and all of the rest of them, they all seem to have their own agendas and want their own things, and they hide things that go against them. That in itself is a form of political corruption and collusion in itself. But we learn, we live, we carry on. Eventually we die, and what the fuck does it matter after all of that? So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I will speak to you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.